So I'm going to go ahead and start recording. Thank you everyone for joining us. I'm Megan Mason from the Center for Global Engagement. I am happy to see some of you who are familiar faces and some who are new faces. And I'm sorry that we can't be having this in person in Ascension like we normally would be, but I appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Professor Contas, do you want to say a little bit about classics? I'll kind of let you, usually you all run the show, so I'll let you do your thing and I'll chime in wherever you'd like me to.
Okay, sounds good. And I'm just gonna speak for a couple seconds and then I'm gonna turn it over to Max and Isabella, and also Thad is joining us and they're gonna talk to you about their experiences studying abroad. So those of you who haven't been but you're interested in going can hear right from the horse's mouth the kinds of experiences you might have. And I'll just say that we really encourage you to go abroad. We have all studied abroad in some fashion, and from my personal experience, it changed my life. It became part of my life. I am now on the board of trustees of College Year in Athens, which is one of the programs that we send Kenyon students to every year. I also teach a summer course there. So for me, that program became a home in Greece. And besides having wonderful friends from that time, from my time there, it also changed the course of my life, because that's when I decided to become an archaeologist. So even if you don't want to become an archaeologist, you will experience something that will be transformative in your time abroad. And I can tell you all about the Greek side. Professor Surface can tell you all about the Italian side, as can Professor Brent. Also Professor Barrett is here too. So you can ask any of us questions about our experiences. And if you have particular questions about how things count for classics, I'm happy to answer those at any time. And Megan will probably explain to you a little bit more about how the process of how you get credit for things. And there's lots of information about that. But today is really about getting you excited to go abroad and letting you know what kinds of options are out there. Our students typically go to Greece and to Italy, as I mentioned, but they go all over the place. So you'll hear today from Max, who was in Denmark, and we also send students to France, to England, to Germany. I mean, you can go wherever you want and study classics, as long as it's something that will work for your major and your program at Kenyon. So with that, I think I'll turn it over. Let's see, who's dying to go first? Max? Maybe you can talk.
Sure. Yeah. I'll go first. So I studied abroad in Copenhagen, Denmark, in the spring of last year. I studied through a program called DIS, which stands for the Danish Institute of Study Abroad. And my focus was actually in political science. So the way that program worked was, as a student, you would select sort of a core course, is what they call it, your core course. And mine was in political science. And then you would sort of do these special trips with your classmates in that course. So for my class, we spent a week in Brussels, Belgium, looking at and touring some of the European Union government buildings and that sort of thing. And then we also spent a weekend in Hamburg, Germany, looking at there it was the UN Council on the Law of the Seas. So it was a very international political science focused class. And that was my core course. And that was sort of what my broad experience was structured around. I also took some economic courses there and some anthropology courses. I took international business. I took anthropology of food, which was very interesting, and we got to do some taste testing and that sort of thing. And then, of course, I took Danish. like an introductory Danish class. And I had an amazing experience. I can't say I had any real direct sort of academic classical teaching or anything like that, but when you're in Europe, it's very much ever present. So one of the big museums in Copenhagen is this classical collection that was, if you know of Carlsberg beer, is a big Danish brewery. And the founder had a large interest in classical artwork and has this big collection that's free on Wednesdays in Copenhagen. So I would be able to pop on the metro and go over there and check it out whenever I wanted to on a Wednesday, which was very nice. And of course, traveling around, I was able to visit Paris and see the Louvre and the classical collections in there. So yeah, that was sort of a very broad, brief explanation of my experience in Copenhagen. Would you like me to talk specifically about like housing or like social life or anything like that?
Sure. And I guess I should have mentioned that you're a classics minor, which is why.
Yes.
So Max is an example of you can do classics and you can also do poli-sci, and you can do them both wherever you happen to go. So yeah, so maybe because there are lots of different housing situations, right? There are homestays, there are apartments, there are dormitories kinds of living. So yeah, if you talk about yours a little bit and then a little bit about your social life, that'd be great.
Yeah, so even within the program itself, there were a lot of different options for housing. DIS is, and it is not directly affiliated with a university there. It was possible to take classes, I think mostly at the Copenhagen Business School, but it is sort of an unaffiliated abroad program. So you weren't set up in, say, like the Copenhagen University dorms or anything like that. My living situation was sort of in a dorm style apartment. I lived with a roommate on a floor with a lot of other kids. We had our own kitchen and bathroom sort of in our room together. And then there was a living space for like multiple rooms on the floor. But then I know some kids lived in smaller apartments with more people. Some kids lived in what they called a collegium, which was sort of student housing. And if you did live in that, that would be with Danish students. And then some kids lived in sort of specific, specialized housing, I guess is a way of putting it. If you were particularly interested in outdoors activities, you could apply to live in the outdoors housing, and they would do special trips to hikes around Denmark to go like rock climbing and things like that. Or the cooking house, which I wish I had applied to live in, had a chef come in once a week with ingredients and they would cook a meal together. So there are sort of fun choices like that in terms of housing as well. Yeah, in terms of social life, it is, I think, especially in that program, very different than Kenyon in that it's a lot more sort of going out to bars and restaurants. That was sort of the big difference for me. Obviously, you're meeting a ton of other kids from different schools. It was nice in my program, everyone lived and went to school, but mostly everyone went to school in the same area. So you'd see the same faces around, and you could stop in coffee shops with people and that sort of thing. And then going out was like a lot of sort of bars and restaurants and that type of thing.
And how's your Danish, Max?
My Danish is not very good at all. I think one of the disadvantages to going to somewhere like Denmark is that everyone there spoke perfect English. So I would almost never have to use Danish. Our Danish teacher would have to assign us to use Danish out in the real world. And particularly after we had been sent home due to COVID, my Danish dwindled quite rapidly. So, I mean, it was nice that everyone spoke English, but I didn't really learn any Danish.
And did you make any Danish friends?
Yeah, so we did make some Danish friends. I wouldn't say any sort of long-lasting friends that I've stayed in touch with, which is a little unfortunate. But I was part of a group that would play soccer at these local fields, and we would see the same faces sometimes when we played pickup games and whatnot. And I guess that's another disadvantage of doing a program that's entirely American students, is you don't have that sort of classroom interaction with local students there.
But you could if you.
Yeah, you could. And in Copenhagen, I know there were programs that were directly affiliated with the universities there, but just not with this program. And this had been the program that students took at Kenyon.
Okay, thanks, Max. Isabella, can you talk about your experience?
Yeah, sure. So I did a classics intensive program in Rome. I went to the Intercollegiate Center for Classical Studies, it's entirely classics, only classics courses, only other classics majors. So there were 25 of us, all living in one building together, all living, eating, and doing class in one building together, which was absolutely lovely. Yeah, it was a really, really cool program. So you take like 3 or 4 classes. Everyone, while I was there, was taking 3 classes. Some people started off in 4 and then decided to drop them. But that's basically because one of the classes that you take that everyone takes is called the Ancient City. And it's a pretty intensive course where you just basically walk around Rome and learn about Rome, and walk around other places near Rome. So you take field trips every week to places that are, like around like maybe an hour or 2 away from Rome, and talk about those locations, as well as 2 field trips, 2 like pretty extensive field trips, one to Sicily and one to the Bay of Naples, where you like look at all the ruins and you see all these different kinds of things and learn about them as you're going along. It was really cool. Probably one of the best experiences I've ever had and that I'll ever have the opportunity to have. Yeah, so while I was there, I took the Ancient City, and then I took Latin and Greek, both. I did not take Italian. My Italian is horrible. Yeah, my dad is Italian, and so I do have like a little bit of a background in Italian. We speak it with my grandmother, but it is certainly not Roman Italian, and I got called out quite a bit for my accent and my dialect. But yeah, so what else? The field trips were probably the coolest part, in my opinion, just being able to go to these places with people who are all equally passionate and equally interested in classics as you are, and getting to see things like up close. Like we learn all about these places in class. You read all these names in all of your texts, and to actually be able to see them up close, and be looking at them with people who like know everything about them is really, really a very cool experience. In terms of housing, I've said to multiple people that it's probably the sweetest housing gig that I'll ever get. Yeah, you all live together, which was a little bit stressful, I guess, at times, since there are only 25 people and sometimes it can get a little bit tense. I had a roommate who I absolutely adore. We're still friends. We still talk pretty often. And yeah, they cook and clean for you, which is awesome. I came home every single day to my bed made for me. We had 3 meals a day that were prepared for us by like professional level chefs. It was like, yeah, the sweetest living situation that I think I'll ever get. I felt very spoiled the whole time. Yeah, they like cleaned my towels for me. It was awesome. Let me see what else. Social life, I think pretty similar to what Max was saying. It was a lot of yeah, when you live with the same 24 other people, you get really close with them, and I did a lot of stuff with them. We went on like trips together on weekends. I got really, really close with a couple of people in my program who I'm still friends with, who I still talk to every day, honestly. And yeah, go out to bars on weekends if you'd like. I had a class only 3 days a week, which meant that I could spend the other days just like sort of walking around Rome with my friends, which was just so wonderful. Oh, one of the other really cool opportunities that you have on the like ICCS program is the opportunity to do an internship with the oh my gosh, why am I blanking out on the name? Oh my gosh.
The academy.
Yeah, the academy in Rome. And it's an internship where you are like examining artifacts and helping them categorize, which seemed pretty cool. I didn't do it, but several of my friends did, and it seemed like a really, really interesting class. The other classes, you don't just have to take languages if you don't want to. I wanted to take the languages, but some of the other classes are really cool too. There are art history classes, as well as one that's on like conservation of ancient monuments. That seems pretty interesting as well. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you, Isabella. Thad, you're up.
Cool. Sorry for joining late, everyone. I had a very different experience from Isabella, but very much in the same place. I also studied in Rome, but I did the Kenyon Rome program, which is a studio art program. I I shrunk from the academic rigor that was implied with the Chantro in the ICCS program. I was a little intimidated by doing all classics, but I still did take Latin, and I had the very rare opportunity to have a one-on-one Latin class there, which was delightful. Alongside that, I did have to take Italian, though please don't ask me to speak it. I'm very, very bad at it. And then I also took an ancient civilization class, so the Kenyon Rome program is integrated with the University of California campus there. And so all of our classes outside of the Kenyon ones, there were two optional, or one class that every Kenyon student had to take, which was our base studio art class, and then another one for studio art majors and anybody trying to take their studio art to the next level. And then outside of that, you could choose from a number of courses offered through University of California's campus there. I did my Latin class and an ancient civilization class that sounds a lot like Isabella's, where we were on site for pretty much every class and got to see so much of the city, which was so much fun. And then, and then I took my Italian class. And yeah, I think I had a lot of freedom with that to travel around, and we had 2 trips as a group, one to Venice for the Biennale, which is a huge art festival, and then another one which was to Sicily. I think the Biennale one was only a few days, but a few days was plenty for me in Venice. I loved it there, but I feel like I saw a lot of the city in that short amount of time. And then our other one to Sicily was 4 or 5 days, and we went to a number of sites and stayed in Siracusa. Yeah, it was beautiful, and we had so much fun.
Okay, thanks, Thad. Can you say a little bit about what was your living situation?
Oh, we lucked out on a living situation. I think everybody in the program last year opted for living in a flat with other Kenyon students. But you can also opt to do have a host family if you want a little bit more of a Italian intensive experience. And we had a really nice flat about 10 minutes away from the Vatican in a neighborhood called Prati, which was really nice. And I think, yeah, we had 2 doubles in there, and I got along really well with all of my housemates. And they were close friends going in, so it wasn't that hard. But we definitely got close over our time there.
Did you ever run into Isabella?
No,
It's
not by design.
All right, thank you very much. So I'll just say a couple words about college year in Athens in case some of you are interested in going to Greece. And then it'd be great if you have any questions for our student speakers or us, we'd be happy to answer them. College year in Athens is what it sounds like. It can be a year study abroad in Athens. It can also be a semester, or as I mentioned, you can go in the summer and take a summer class if you're feeling like you can't take an entire semester away from your beloved Kenyon. So it's right in the heart of Athens. Students live in apartments. There is also now the option of homestays. if you'd like to have some nice Greek home cooking. Like the other programs that we've been hearing about, trips are really important. So they're big group trips. You get to go to Crete, you get to see Delphi, you get to go all over the beautiful country of Greece with your home base in Athens. And you can also travel yourself. There's lots of time for individual travel. When I was a student, I went to Turkey and Egypt during my time there. As far as academics, it's a little bit like DIS in that it has a lot of options. It was founded on the classics. So there's a core classics setup. So if you really want to go like Isabella and have an intense classical experience, you can do that at CYA, and there will be students doing that. But if you want to study some other things while you're there, I mean, they have psychology, they have lots of other majors, students that are interested in modern Greek history or economics, whatever it is. So if you are thinking about minoring in classics, you can still go to CYA. And I would also say that if you're thinking of minoring in classics, we have lots of classics minors who, like Max, go to the DIS program in Denmark, but are able to take some classics courses, particularly, as Max mentioned, on the archaeological side, because there are some incredible stolen collections in Denmark, in Copenhagen. They're fabulous. So those are options. So at any rate, there are lots of options, lots of different ways you can go with your study abroad. And within these programs, you have lots of choices. So CYA, for instance, and I'm sure this is the case with the other programs, if you want to play soccer, for instance, or if you want to go to Lesbos and help with the refugee camps, like that kind of thing, anything you want to do while you're in Greece, they will help you to do. And it's really about what you make of your time there. If you want to learn Greek and have Greek friends, you can do it and they'll help you. So it's about just deciding what you really want to get out of it and getting some help, having those experiences. And I just can't stress enough how wonderful it is and how it will expand your mind, your academic mind, and also just your world in general. Okay, so questions, anybody?
How does the process for applying to study abroad work from the Kenyon internal perspective?
All right, let me jump in here. So in order to go off campus during a Kenyon semester or for the year, you need Kenyon's approval first. We have an application deadline of February 15th that applies to the vast majority of OCS programs. There are a handful of exceptions that have exceptionally early deadlines that would need to be before the end of this semester. So those would include things like Japan Study, the Oxford program, Cambridge, the London School of Economics, the Swedish program for fall, handful maybe of other rolling admissions programs that are not terribly relevant to classics. So I'll spare you those, but if you think you might be looking at one, let us know and we'll help you get through the application. But generally it's February 15th. So you apply for Kenyon approval, and to do that, you need to have declared your major first. Your major advisor will sign off on your application. You'll submit a bit of information about why you've chosen the program you've chosen and what your rationale is for going on that program. And we'll review it and let you know if it's been approved. You can apply to up to 2 programs for Kenyon approval. So if you're kind of still deciding between 2 good options or want to have a backup just in case, then you can have 2. And after you get Kenyon approval, then you apply to your program for their approval. We have very good success with students getting accepted by the programs that they apply to because Kenyon's process prepares you for that. So we'll ask you to start thinking about what your goals are, and not just in a personal having fun sense, although we hope you do have fun, but also especially academic goals. So that will really help to prepare you for the program's application process as well. And the next corollary to this that a lot of people ask, so I'm just going to jump on it, is finances. To go off campus, you pay Kenyon tuition, room, and board charges, and then we pay the program fees for you. In a few small cases, there are programs that are more expensive than Kenyon, and so we have to pass on those additional costs. A similar, the list is a little bit similar. Oxford is on there again, but the vast majority of programs are covered in your Kenyon tuition. And your financial aid goes with you to any program. So if you have questions about finances, we can prepare an individualized budget sheet for you that lists what your program's costs most recently when they ran were, and what your financial aid was, probably your financial aid from last year, because this year is a little bit adjusted differently. And then we will give you a sense of kind of what to expect with the finances. So if you have any concerns about it, just come and ask us. But the main thing is that it does apply. For summer programs, unfortunately, there isn't financial aid available through Kenyon. However, sometimes the programs do have financial aid available directly through them. So that's always a possibility if you're looking at summer programs. And the process for approval is a little bit different, a lot easier actually for summer. You just kind of let us know what you're doing, and then you go off and do it, since you're not going through Kenyon and it's not necessarily always for credit over the summer. So that's the approval in a very brief nutshell. I'm going to share in the chat the one website that has all of the information that you could possibly need. It's called Studio Abroad. This is our program database. You apply for programs here. We have in there a list of all of the students who studied off campus last year. So Max and Isabella and Thad are on that list, along with a number of other students as well. We also have a couple of videos we've done that have kind of general information about how to apply for off-campus study. So if you missed those, you can watch the videos and see what we talked about. And then there's a virtual info day. So normally we have kind of a fair and all the providers come and they talk about their programs. We obviously can't do that. So instead, there's a lovely image of Gun Commons Ballroom, which was taken by my colleague and classics major, Rebecca Eckert. And if you click on that, you can see like a video from CYA, you can see a video from ICCS, you can see a video from DIS. So you can see how these providers talk about themselves and what their programs are like. And it's got the email contact information for all the programs too. So that's all in Studio Abroad. Also, if you don't have more questions for the students, I'll start asking. So.
Well, okay, all right. I mean, I have questions for the students because, as I said to my Greek history class, I'm so desperate to leave Gambier. I need to be regaled with tales of life abroad. So let me ask you, well, all three of you all went for a semester, correct? Did you consider going for a year instead, or did you think about going for a summer instead? I'm just curious about why you ended up choosing the time period you did. Then I'll stop asking questions.
I guess I can, oh,
Okay.
sorry.
Go ahead, go ahead.
For me, it was pretty easy because as an athlete, my soccer season was in the fall. So I wanted to be on campus for that. So I decided to go in the spring. I considered going in the summer, but also this is a time for sort of internships and that sort of thing. So I wanted to do that as well. So it made sense for me to go in the spring. And I was also able to really complete my sort of academic requirements that I needed to do while I was abroad. So it worked out well for me in the spring.
Yeah, it was also a pretty easy decision for me. I'm a double major, and so I'm a math and classics major, and so it was sort of like I was fairly confident that I wanted to do like the Chentros program, and like, which is a semester. But I also knew that like in order to do a program like that, I really could only do one semester in order to be able to fulfill the requirements I need to for both majors.
Yeah, I can't say that I had any more difficult a time deciding than Isabella or Max, but I was somewhat intimidated by going in the spring because I wanted to be on Kenyon campus second semester my junior year, because I felt that it would be weird to have kind of a summer and a semester in between being there and it being my senior year on campus. And also I love the end of the year at Kenyon when it's final season starting to get nice out. I think it's a delightful time to be on campus.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it.
Thinking back to yourselves this time when you were sophomores, what sort of advice do you have for students as they're sort of deciding whether to go off campus and what they might want to do?
Yeah, the application process is not that hard. Stop putting it off. I put it off for so long because I was like so intimidated by filling it out, but it was tremendously easy. It took me maybe an hour or two, and just think about where you want to go, and you can always apply. I think you can apply to more than one place, but you can apply to two. So pick a top two, or even better, just the top one, and execute on it, because I don't know anyone who has regretted going abroad yet.
Yeah, I think it's very easy to sort of complain about how Kenyon has this sort of double application. It may appear to be annoying at first, but in my program, it was pretty unheard of for anyone from Kenyon being rejected, whereas a lot of the kids I spoke to had friends who had wanted to go to DIS in Copenhagen and had actually been rejected. So it is a little annoying that you have to apply through Kenyon first, but it is actually in the end really nice because you can be pretty sure about going where you want to go.
Yeah, like I don't think I have anything like super exciting to add on to that. Like I think that kind of like if you're considering study abroad and it's feasible for you to do, you should definitely do it. You know, like don't let anything like the application or the complications that are going to come up like stop you, you know, like you should definitely do it, I think.
I'll just say, as someone who has read a lot of those study abroad applications, they might not take you very long, Thad, but you really should proofread and follow the directions. Answer the questions that are asked. That would be my advice.
Solid advice. Thank you, everyone. Tell us like something that you experienced or saw while you were abroad that you will always remember, or something that really wowed you.
All right, I'll go first. I think that the first one that came to mind was I had a free weekend, and so did somebody else in my program, and we decided to, it was, I think, pretty deep in November, and it was kind of the off season for travel. And we went to this small town, maybe an hour and a half outside of Naples on the Amalfi Coast, because we had been meaning to go there forever and had been putting it off. And it was pretty deserted. We had to take a number of very suspect taxis and trains, and we went through the mountains, and we had a phenomenal weekend there. We hiked around, we had great food. The local community was surprisingly, I think, even more receptive to us because there were so few travelers at the time, and everybody was trying to tell us where to go. And they had a community of stray animals that they were all collectively taking care of, that would kind of wander in and off the property. And it was a really good time, but it is outside of academics. So I hope that's not too far from what you're looking for.
No, that's fine. Thank you. I did not specify that it had to be related to a class.
Yeah, I guess there are a few things that come to mind. I was able to do a trip to Prague at the very tail end of, I mean, it shouldn't have been the end, but right as Corona was sort of sweeping through Europe. So it is a city that's known for a lot of tourism, but it wasn't very touristy because of a lack of travel going on at the time. So that was a pretty cool experience to be able to walk around the city without the giant crowds and that sort of thing. Another really interesting experience, while we were on our trip to Brussels, we were able to do an interview with a pretty high up Lithuanian diplomat through my course, and go to the Lithuanian embassy. And it was this whole sort of fancy building with all this sort of Lithuanian regalia around. So that was very, very interesting. And it was interesting perspective on the EU and the issues going on with the EU. On the same trip, we went to one of the bigger European news networks to meet with some sort of people in that industry. And we were in one of their buildings, in one of their rooms, watching this guy on live TV, and you could look out the window and see him filming in the center square of Brussels, which was pretty cool. And then he came up and talked to us, and it was an interesting experience.
This is like probably a little bit basic, but honestly, seeing Pompeii was really wild. Like I'd been to Pompeii before, but I was like 4 or 5 years old, so I did not really appreciate it fully on the first time that I went. And going back was just like so cool to be able to walk around. And freshman year, I wrote a paper on like the lupinarium in Pompeii. So then to actually like go back and see it and be like, this is something that I dedicated, a lot of time and energy to writing about, to be able to see it in person. I did in fact literally start crying in the brothel in Pompeii. So yeah.
Yeah, sort of more related to classics. I guess there were it was very cool to have studied like a piece of artwork in archaeology class and then see it in person. Was a pretty cool experience, especially in the Louvre. Some of those pieces there it was nice to sort of have that background information, and you've spent so many hours looking at pictures. It was almost like cathartic to be able to see it in person.
I'm glad to hear that, Max. And Isabella, to your point, if you go to college here in Athens, you will be able to go inside the Parthenon, which when I took my students in last summer, they were weeping. I mean, like tears were coming down their face, and it was a very emotional experience. But yeah, it's cool to see the stuff in person.
Sorry, I just saw Anne had asked about transferring credits. So the general rule is if it's liberal arts and nature, then your credit will transfer back to Kenyon for general Kenyon credit. There are a couple caveats. You're required to take the language wherever you are. ICCS is a little bit of an exception. Sometimes you can't do that if you're taking both of the ancient languages. So we've made exceptions for that in the past, but generally speaking, you do have to take the local language so you can communicate with folks in case you need to. Other than that, though, then your credit will transfer. And if you have questions about how classes will count towards the classics major, that's really up to Professor Contis as chair.
If you already, sorry.
Before you go, I will sign off on each class that might count for something for classics, and we'll talk about how it will count for your major or your minor.
And if you change it once you're there, you can always, like, if you realize, oh shoot, I thought this was one class, but it looks like it's really kind of different than I thought it was. Usually there's an opportunity to change. If you had a big choice in selection, usually there's an opportunity to change. And so you can send an email during that first week of classes or the orientation week and switch it if you need to.
If you speak a language in the country that you're going to, like for instance Spain, you speak Spanish, do you have to take that language when you're there, or no?
So if you already speak Spanish at a higher level, then it's likely that your classes will actually be taught in Spanish, and that counts. Yeah, that would be the same for any of the languages that are taught at Kenyon. If you're kind of above that intermediate level, then we'd be looking for programs for you where you can be taking classes that are taught in the language, and potentially that could really expand the options that are available to you. Do we have other questions for our panelists? I can tell you about the application deadlines anytime, but they have much more exciting stories than I do. That is not a... The last time I traveled was actually when I went to Rome, when I saw Thad and Isabella in the fall. So it's kind of cool.
If there are no more questions, student panelists, would you welcome email questions in case somebody thinks of something after this meeting? Great, thank you. And certainly you can contact any of us in the classics department, and please come declare classics majors so you can go abroad.
Yeah, and you're welcome to schedule an appointment with me anytime. My coworkers also are happy to chat with you. Marn has office hours actually right now until 7. I have office hours on Wednesdays from 7 to 9, and then you can schedule a one-on-one appointment with us basically kind of any weekday during the day over Google Meet. So.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Megan. And thank you so much, Max and Isabella and Thad and all of you that joined us today. Please don't hesitate to reach out with questions.
Yes, thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Professor.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.